The following is a project of our nonprofit newsroom. Support Midcoast Morning and local journalism today at chly.ca/donate. Local news doesn't survive without local support.
Hello and welcome to Midcoast Morning. I'm Joe Pugh. Nanaimo City Council voted Monday to abandon plans for more lighting on the ENN Trail in favour of other to-be-determined pedestrian projects. Around $1 million had been planned to be spent adding light to the section of the trail between Northfield Road and Rock City Road in 2026. The impetus for the change was a motion from councillor Tyler Brown. Here he is speaking to it at a special council meeting on Monday.
With limited resources, I think if we're spending our if we're spending capital on active transportation projects, I think we have a whole list of projects around schools within some of the neighborhoods where this money could be better spent. That is a dark section of the ENN corridor for sure, but typically people that are riding into the evening hours have the appropriate gear and the lights on their bike. And so if they are active riders, some of these other projects, especially around pedestrian safety, I think could definitely benefit from this funding. So I think it's money better spent, and I hope council will support it. Thank you.
Various members of Nanaimo City Council expressed their positions on the issue. Here they are, beginning with councillor Ian Thorpe.
As I spoke on last Wednesday, I guess it was, I would prefer that we go ahead with the ENN project, which we have discussed before, and rather than put this money into some unknown projects for future, I see the ENN as a very important recreational facility, which is extremely well used. And I feel that it also does speak to pedestrian safety for the users of that trail in the early morning or evening hours when it's very dark in places. So I don't think I can support the motion on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong?
Thank you. A question for staff. If we remove the ENN trail lighting, there's been lots of incidences, and I know I'm aware of some of them, where people then don't use that trail at night and they actually use the highway because of that. Can you comment to that if you have any knowledge?
Mr. Sims.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just briefly, one of the rationale for putting in the trail, other than we could and for recreational purposes, was really to move people off the highway, especially during slushy or winter events. Just to allow that commuter route. And this goes back to Mr. Harding's era in the 90s, I would say.
Thank you. Yes, I won't be supporting the project. I think the money is much better spent on the ENN trail, where that trail is used constantly. And as a person that drives that highway at all different times, days and nights, you quite often do see cyclists and pedestrians on the highway because it's better lit. And $1 million doesn't buy you much sidewalk, where it really does help the trail. So for those reasons, I won't be supporting this at this time.
Councillor Gesselbrock, then Councillor Eastburn.
Great, thank you. Although I'd love to see the lighting on the path, I do think that at this stage of the game, that level of investment in active transportation it could go farther with the backlog of community requests and needs for different safer and accessible amenities on the streets. Thanks.
Councillor Eastburn.
Thank you. I'm not going to support this because I have been hearing about plans to light this section of the ENN for a really long time, and I know that it's a well-used area, and we see people traveling in the dark, and that section of highway is it's not lit at all, so it's very, very dark at night. And so I really actually see this as a key section of our pedestrian and active transportation that we should do it properly so that it can be used as the connective spine that it really is in Nanaimo.
Thank you. For what it's worth, I am going to support the motion. I think it is an appropriate use. My observation of the trail, particularly at nighttime, is there are lots of adjacent buildings, etc., and various other lighting from cars. The likelihood of some horrible altercation involving a speeding motor vehicle is impossible on the ENN trail, whereas the other projects that staff have identified over the years strike me as being more worthy of safety. As I said, and I don't want to sound like a cynical old guy from Coombs, BC, but when I grew up, there was no such thing as street lighting. If you rode a bike at night or walked somewhere at night, you either chose to walk in the dark or you took a flashlight, you wore clothing, you put a light on your bicycle, whatever. You took some steps to protect yourself at night. So for what it's worth, I just think that the better bang for the buck safety-wise is in what Councillor Brown's motion suggests, so I will be supporting it. Anyone else? Motion's on the floor. All those in favour? Councillors Gesselbrock, Hemmens, Mayor Krogh, Councillor Brown, Councillor Manley, and those opposed, Councillors Armstrong, Eastmere, and Thorpe and Perino. The motion carries.
Phil Hall, president of the Nanaimo Area Cycling Coalition, called the move disappointing. What did you make of this decision, of this motion that council voted for on Monday with regards to pedestrian funding and a planned project on lighting the ENN trail?
Well, the decision is actually very disappointing for cyclists. We have nothing against, in fact, we're all in favor of pedestrian improvements, but there doesn't seem to be a solid rationale why to remove this funding and to delay again the improving the lighting of the ENN trail. I can say that having watched the proceedings and listened to Councillor Tyler Brown's rationale, it seems to center around that bike riders have lights and many places pedestrians don't, so they don't need to light these trails. And I think that's a basic misunderstanding of the ENN trail because it's a shared pathway with pedestrians, and pedestrians don't carry lights, nor should they have to. So it has this just as much reason to have street lights as a street does. So that doesn't seem to be solid reasoning for that. And from a cycling point of view, once again, it feels like the rug's being pulled out from under us. There sounds like there was a council decision at some point in the past to put this lighting in and as I said, with very little rationale. They're pulling the funding again. And this is an arterial route for cycling in Nanaimo. It should be a top priority. Instead, it sounds like active transportation users are, fighting for scraps in a way that motorists, seldom do, certainly not for arterial routes.
Now, if you had to prioritize funding for new cycling-related projects in Nanaimo, what would you prioritize, and where would lighting upgrades on the ENN trail fall on that priorities list?
That's a complicated question that probably can't be answered in a few minutes, I'm afraid. There are many connections to make. So Nanaimo is putting in cycling routes and cycling lanes where there are new developments. And as we know, there are little bits here and there as the developments are made. So that is a very high priority for us. And another high priority is the connections to use the ENN trail, which is a arterial and a spine that runs up the length of much of Nanaimo, to then allow connections into other parts of Nanaimo. So those are high priorities too. But much of that comes away from the fact that ENN trail itself is a very high priority. And to make it safer, and to make it easier so that more cyclists use it, I don't think we really, if it's already been decided that that's the next thing to do. So we see no rationale for putting that off, or in fact, in this case, simply deciding not to do it.
Phil Hall is president of the Nanaimo Area Cycling Coalition.
Midcoast Morning is part of our nonprofit newsroom project, supported by listeners like you. Keep this program on the air by funding it today with a monthly sustaining donation at chly.ca/donate. We've got tote bags and shirts if you need an incentive.
Also decided on Monday, a Nanaimo Winter Festival is on track to become a biannual event starting in 2027. The Luminous Paths Festival lit up Maffeo Sutton Park in January and February of this past year, featuring work from local artists. It was initially held to mark 150 years since the incorporation of Nanaimo and was funded in part by the federal government. Last week, at a special Finance and Audit Committee meeting, Council had considered the idea of funding the festival in future years, with Councillor Hilary Eastmere moving a motion to do so, but that motion was defeated. At a special council meeting on Monday, Councillor Ian Thorpe brought the subject back for discussion. Here are some highlights from the relevant section of Monday's meeting.
When we discussed this last week, I was not enthused about the Luminous Paths project, and I apologize to the organizers on staff. That was my personal opinion, but over the weekend I did speak to a number of people, including those in the hospitality and the tourism sector, and they were quite convincing in their feeling that this was a positive and useful project. They also pointed out that to sponsor it or get it organized for this winter, the time frame is actually very tight and might not even be feasible. But the idea of every second year held a great deal of appeal, and it was felt through the tourism lens that it would be a worthwhile project. So I'm willing to reconsider my original viewpoint on this, and would like Council to discuss having this festival every second year. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmens, Armstrong, Gesselbrock, Eastmere, and Prino, in that order. Councillor Hemmens.
Everyone, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor Thorpe. I was also going to bring this back for reconsideration for the same reasons. I understand the tourism sector is really excited about this, and also just it's an amazing festival. Staff put in a ton of work, and it was really well received. So I was actually going to move to have the annual one put in place, but I find the timeline of it compelling. It would be difficult to get off the ground this year, so I'm happy to support the biannual, and if we can reevaluate as funding becomes available going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. My question is through to staff. If I see Ms. Breen's here, if we went to the $50,000 a year, would that be doable? My concern is if we go every other year, can you build the momentum that is required for a festival like that?
Through the chair to Councillor Armstrong, if I could have Jamie Brett speak to Councillor Armstrong's question around the 50,000. Thank you. And
through the chair, yes, it's just how you prioritize. So the priority with a smaller budget would, of course, be, as we were initially, focusing a lot on sponsorship as well, but then focusing on the art we are commissioning. And then we're looking at, with that smaller budget, potentially having, a few less performers, as it would be. But the focus would be on the artwork we commission, and it's still a doable budget to commission those illuminated pieces for the festival.
So if we went as this motion is, do you think the momentum would still go if it's every other year, or is it better to do it yearly?
I think so. Cities like Victoria do their illumination festival every other year. So there are some examples to follow in that way. It also is allowing a little bit more time for momentum to build in terms of the community knowing about it, in terms of sharing that information, also allowing artists more time to create as well and to really develop partnerships too. So there are some benefits in that way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thanks, Mayor, through you. I'm more inclined to support option 2, doing the 50,000 on an annual basis. I think, this particular year there might not be enough time to make it happen, and it may not happen. But I do think every 2 years. It is a bit fragmented in terms of momentum, and I think having it on annual would create the consistency needed to get the most out of it and make it sort of a bit of a tradition here in Nanaimo in the winter, as opposed to having one dark year and one light year. So I won't be supporting this particular motion, but if it does fail, would support option 2 being brought forward for the annual funding, knowing that we probably something this year might not get off the ground, but going forward, there'd be consistent funding for a well-appreciated festival. Thanks.
Discussion, Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just a very quick question. So if I'm hearing you correctly, the 86,000 that we're putting in, should we still receive even the grants we have verified today? So it'll come in around, well, just shy of 70,000, right? So is that right? That's right? No, I'm not worried about the math, but I'm just wanting to make sure that it reduces it. So, because there was some discussion about the 50,000 range, and what I'm hoping is that given this extra time, it not only allows the artists to give a more fulsome time to do the work that they need to do, but also to allow sponsorships to come forward and make sure that we can maybe bring this down to a price tag that makes it worthwhile. And I disagree with some of the councillors that said that this needed to be every year. I think there would be a huge amount of excitement by having it on a biannual basis. It just allows the artists time to review their work, decide what they like, and how to move forward. So I'm excited for it. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? I've got Councillors Manley, Thorpe, and Eastmere on the list. Do you wish to speak to the main motion now?
Yeah.
Councillor Manley.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm actually in favor of doing this annually. I would have picked option 2, and so if this motion fails, that's what I'd like to see go forward. I think that we have momentum from last year. We can build on that this year, and I think that it's a fantastic festival, and for the winter months, I think it brings a lot of joy to people and activates the park, and so I want to see it happen every year. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Eastmere?
I also would have supported option 2. That was really my preference, to see an annual event. I think it's helpful to know that cities like Victoria do a biannual. I know the amount of time that goes into organizing something like this and putting out the call for artists and giving them a chance to actually create, to both submit a proposal and then create that piece. I think we may get better pieces if they have more time to work on it. I know we have an amazing roster of local artists that staff have a strong relationship with, and I really value that. And I think in addition to that, having time to put it out to additional artists to really diversify our offerings at the Luminous Paths Festival will be a benefit. And I appreciate the increased funding of the 86,000 so that we can have more performers, because I think that's a really important aspect of this festival, to really activate that park space. And having attended a number of times last year, seeing the opening and the closing bookend events, I know, for example, the Collective Brew Disco that happened was really fun, and I've heard from lots of people in the community that they really enjoyed being able to dance around the park, and I hope that that's one of the performances that we see in the future with that participatory aspect. So I'm glad we got to take another crack at this motion, and I think this is going to be a benefit to our arts and culture sector, and give lots of time for both creation and promotion, which is critical to the success of a festival like this.
Thank you. Question for staff. We got it down to 6.34 the other day. What will this take us to, Ms. Fulla or Ms. Mercer?
We will still be at 6.3.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to support it this time, notwithstanding the other day. I was certainly prepared and did speak against it for this year, because I wanted to keep the tax increase as low as is reasonably possible. Given that this is going to be a biannual event, and that's good enough for the capital city of the province, it strikes me that it certainly should be good enough for Nanaimo. But I must say, candidly, having attended an event recognizing the 36th anniversary of the Montreal Massacre on Saturday night, the lighting that is there now, and I'm looking at park staff in particular, is amazing, and there were lots of families down there. Without the benefit of a festival, the Luminous Festival, Paths Festival, already taking their kids around at what was a beautifully decorated and amazingly attractive park. So, having said that, all those in favor and any opposed? Councillor Gesselbrock and Councillor Manley, the motion carries. Thank you.
Excerpts from a special Nanaimo City Council meeting on Monday, in which councillors voted to fund the Luminous Paths Winter Festival on a biannual basis, beginning with a 2027 edition of the festival.
I found this particular slide shocking.
This information in this slide really kind of stymied me.
Some members of Nanaimo City Council expressed concern after hearing from consultants that townhomes are the only broadly viable type of development in the city right now. At a Governance and Priorities Committee meeting Monday, staff provided an update on the city's Development Cost Charges review process. During the meeting, Sean Herman with consultant Urban Systems said that because of wider economic challenges, most forms of development aren't commercially viable in Nanaimo right now. The exception being townhomes and, in some cases, potentially wood-frame apartments. Here is a portion of Herman's presentation, followed by some discussions amongst Nanaimo City Council.
The economy as a whole is basically, struggling a bit with these increasing costs of materials and labor, and how that's kind of playing out here. Is definitely focusing on some bigger picture items that go kind of beyond the DCs and ACCs themselves.
Okay, this slide has triggered a few questions, so we'll maybe pause on that one before we move on. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. It is again on the profit margins, right? Like, it's hard for us to know what a profit margin is going to be for some place, and do we trust when the developer comes forward? So I appreciate the fact that you're looking at least 15% and 10 to 15%. Do we know what the average profitability rate is of development in Nanaimo? Like, what is there a percentage you can give us, or is it each project separate, or is there a rough estimate?
Through the chair, it varies so vastly, and by geography and by each of these typologies, there'd be no kind of typical average, and it would be really based on that, a whole number of factors that would be incredibly site specific. So, there's not a kind of an average level of profitability, so to speak. Most developers will not proceed below 15%. Some will, depending on certain conditions and where they're at, with some of that potentially viable zone of 10 to 15. So if you're seeing a development proceed, it's pretty fair to assume they're probably aiming to achieve at least 10%.
So the way I'm reading this is basically the only thing that's viable to build here right now is a townhouse.
Yeah, if you were to come in to buy a piece of property today, and that's not universally true. Again, it depends when you bought the land. If you're to kind of come today and buy that land,
True, yeah.
Townhouse would probably be the one that is probably most viable. Again, it depends on the site. We didn't test every site in Nanaimo. What we did is we worked with planning to select a number of representative sites, and those with development potential, with the appropriate zoning and site areas and things like that. Things that the developers may be targeting from their perspective as viable sites, and that's what we tested. So there may be things that are more viable in some of those categories, but generally it is a pretty challenging environment for them. And I think that's some of the feedback that's coming through on the phasing side of things, is that, particularly now the economics are quite difficult.
Thank you.
Mayor Crook.
Thank you very much, Chair. And through you, I have a friend who's a contractor who's finally retired, and cost plus is always the cost plus 15%, and if it's not, he's not doing it. And so what these figures confirm, I think, for me is, honestly, whatever the DCC is, even within the high range, the low range, the middle range, it's not going to make any significant difference unless the economy, so to speak, the marketplace is there. And that's a fair comment, and I see nodding heads and just confirming what you've already said. Much appreciate this. And I'm glad it's in a public place today being discussed and put out, so that council can rely on it on whatever we may or may not do with the DCCs, so that perhaps some of the more vociferous complaints that do come from some people might be answered. Thank you.
Councillor Hammonds.
Thank you, Chair. This information in this slide really kind of stymied me. So thank you for the comments, which I agree with. My question, though, and I'm not even sure if it's for you guys or for my colleagues, but if we're already determining that development is unviable across these sectors, and we're hearing that, well, DCCs or ACCs just present this little minor blip, it's actually labor costs and construction costs, we're still adding costs. We're, even though we're not, DCCs and ACCs are not driving it, or AACs not driving it, we're still compounding it in an environment where 4 out of 5 categories are unbuildable. So I don't think that's a question. I think that's just a statement.
Councillor Perino.
Thank you, Chair. I just, I found this particular slide shocking. And as Councillor Hammond said, and I agree 100%, when we add more and more costs, then it just takes it to that tipping point. The Prime Minister talked actually on a news brief. As I was reading the documents in preparation for today, the Prime Minister was talking about the need for more homes. And I'm like, how can you possibly expect us to build more homes when you've got, the time it takes to go from the document side to the time we start construction, to all the permit costs, to all the DCCs, now the ACCs, an additional cost, the land cost, the list is endless, and this is passed on to whoever moves into those homes. Whether it's an apartment, a townhouse, or single-family home, whatever it is, it's passed on to them. So we create an environment that makes it difficult for people to find, especially young families, to find accommodations, which I find really difficult, and this is where I think our federal government needs to step up and help more. But I wish we were not adding another cost. So I appreciate what your comments were, Councillor Hammonds. I wish that we could stop with the addition, because it sure makes it tough to see the end user get into a home.
Sections of a Nanaimo Governance and Priorities Committee meeting Monday. During the meeting, Nanaimo City Councillors heard from consultant Urban Systems that in cases where one does not already own the land, several types of development are not broadly viable in the city. That's our show for the day. Thank you for joining me. I'm Joe Pugh, host and producer of Midcoast Morning. Jesse Woodward is our executive producer, and RB Frew is our technical advisor. Our theme song is First One by local Nanaimo band Waste Management. You can get in touch with us at news@chly.ca. That's all for now. I'll talk to you on another Midcoast Morning.
This program gives thanks to the Nanaimo First Nation as we broadcast and podcast from their traditional territory. Thanks for listening.